Okay, I think we're live. I think. I know. We are live. It's time to go. Soli Deo Gloria. Welcome, everyone. Welcome. I'm going to give a few minutes for people to join. But first, I just want to say this is a super deep topic, very deep. It's also a very dear topic to people because it's going to touch on things that are probably some of the harder things. So I wanted to just lead off by sort of saying, I do understand all the feelings very well. It's a very normal feeling to have this alienation type expression show up in us, to feel unwelcome by everyone, society, family, friends, whoever, to feel cast aside or unseen. These types of feelings, super normal. So really, to start, I guess I just want to say you are never alone. You are not alienated. It couldn't be so. It does appear so. And I want to talk about, it seemed important. We're moving through a void of space right now where, it's the 10 days of darkness. And the Schumann resonance is offline and things like that as well. So we're moving through a very emotional type of time. And what I'm noticing is there's a feeling of that alienation being thematically played out, and I see it in my life as well. And so I'm feeling it in the collective, so that's why we're talking about it today. I thought it might be helpful for some people that are wanting to get their head around what is the soul actually, what's the purpose of that? Like, why does it feel, why did I choose to be this way then? Because obviously if we're taking responsibility that we've selected these things about our life, as far as a creator being, that we know what we're doing at some level, we know what we chose and why. Then the question obviously becomes, well, why would I do that? Almost all wanderers, starseeds, people that relate to being indigo, crystal children, and any of these people, even if they just consider themselves like that highly sensitive HSP or whatever, it's all sort of the same thing, really. Generally speaking, most are volunteer souls that are coming from fourth, fifth, or sixth density of consciousness, and they're coming here because Earth was asking to have catalyst for wake up, to have catalyst for wake up. So we are essentially these souls that are these souls. Now, there's no difference between souls. There's no hierarchy to any of this. It's just that these souls, many of them, so many of us here, are from just long periods of time further, different times, right? Or we have experience that allows us to see the world more properly or more truly. This causes us to also generally get confused. So I wanted to talk about a little bit about a life that I had in the Essenes, to demonstrate the difference now between what's happening now and what happened back then. So these were people who understood that the soul has a certain vibrational frequency and certain, like, it's got a certain thing it's going to want to do. So as soon as the soul's birth, the master astrologer, you could say, but that master would read the chart and discern what this type of soul is going to be bringing through, so they could then kind of direct or help guide that soul in that direction, assuming it wants to, knowing that it can choose whatever it wants. It has that free will as well. Whereas now we are thrown into, essentially because of power and greed, hunger, and things like that, power, hungry, greed, I meant to say. we're more tossed just into a box where it's just told to us what we're going to learn and what we're going to do and what we're going to become and be. It's also taught to us very, very quickly that everything is incentive based. Everything is based on merit, your merit at whatever thing they're making you do. So we end up creating this world where all we're ever trying to do is please everyone, basically, which is exhausting. It's absolutely exhausting because what we're doing is we're giving energy to an illusion. We think we're giving energy to other people, but we're not. What we're doing is we're giving energy to an illusion of ego. And this is confusing a little bit because we think we're helping people a lot. And this is important because the soul's needing to understand that the way that we came in, some of us, not all of us, but one of the reasons that we came in was to affirm others' perfection, not to affirm their weakness, right? Does that make sense? To affirm in loving honesty what they are in truth, not this guise they're having. So our natural inclination is to do that. The soul's inclination, which means you are essentially a lightning storm for people. Sometimes it's calm, and then you say something, boom, the inside goes off because triggered. They may not do or say anything. So part of our being here is actually to just do this accidentally. If we're trying to consciously do this to people, we need to examine ourselves, because that's even, I would say that even worse, probably. It's not worse, it's not the right word, but it's more, I think, karmically relevant to us. It's going to be painful for us because we're trying to just shock people awake. And I've done this, when I first popped awake, that's what I kind of thought. We often misinterpret these things. We often misinterpret, and we think we are helping them by trying to shock them like that. It's, some of us are meant to do some of that, right? And get into some of that and get, they'll learn whatever their lessons are. So there's a path and a purpose to everything. But because we do this so automatically, and so completely accidentally almost, we're often placed now into positions where people blame us for it, and either knowingly and say things about it, or they disappear. They seem to not want to hang around us too much, or they say they're going to stick around. They fall in love with us really easily, but then our passions start to actually be let out a little bit because our heart's starting to feel open with them. We're starting to feel intimate, and then they don't like what they see or something somehow, because the truth of who we are starts to really shine out. And so the Christ itself starts to step into the relationship. This is usually what starts to occur here and there, or very persistently. And this is very shocking to people. It's weird. And it doesn't mean you're like, oh, I'm Jesus, or it doesn't mean that. It just means you're treating them as a pristine soul, and that's confusing for the ego aspect of self that everyone has. It's very confusing, and it's confronting to it, because it's the ego is going to immediately compare and start to try to shit talk itself, basically. And then that may come out at you, or it may not, but this soul on the other side, the human, will sense through their intuition and all that. They'll sense this disharmony is formed, and they'll feel not properly received. They might feel drained, for example. And then we start to get frustrated with maybe them for not receiving us. But the reason they can't receive us is because they're confused by their ego, right? The ego. And the reason that we think that that's a problem is because our egos confused us as well. And it's sort of this, what we're trying to notice is that the reason that that's programmed that way is because essentially We are meant to learn that one, 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 never alone. It's not possible. We're not meant to invest our power and our identity and being into other beings. We're not meant to do that. We do it for a time because we think that that's how it's meant to be. That's the animalistic part of us that wants the we, and even humans affirm for themselves very often, oh, we're a naturally social species and we need each other and stuff, and we do, and even but we misinterpret just that we do need to work together. We do need each other as one. We don't need to fight each other. So, like, we just don't have to do these things. We could all just stop, right? Obviously, if there was a mass bang and everyone just went, oh, we don't have to do this. We could just like all just stop the fighting. And then it's just done. There's no more fighting or hurting at all. That could happen. But unfortunately for humans, we tend to take the harder route. We tend to take the route that's a little more bumpy because we tend to need that karma or different stories and things to push us away from getting sucked into the illusion. Getting sucked into the illusion in an unhealthy way. What we want to do is love the world, love the people, love our friends and family, but not in a way that our value is tied up in them. That's what we're meant to really learn. And I think you'll know that feels true, right? That feels totally true. We're not meant to be tied up in them that way. And they're not, their soul appreciates that unconditional love. That's where unconditional love can form because there's not an egoic attachment. Egoic attachment inhibits the unconditionalness of the love. Unconditionalness. That doesn't sound like a word, but it makes sense. And so we inhibit ourselves because we've wrapped up part of ourself in them, which is confused. And so the soul has to then orient to learn that that's a little confused. Thanks, Brian. Thank you. Appreciate that. It's affirming. We want to be affirming for ourselves that we are okay by ourselves because we're not alone, because there is no such thing as alone. All alone even mean all one, right? All one. Just try to reframe the mind into that understanding that not only can you visit with these souls right in your heart at any time and speak with them and hear them, and that's just as real. I do it all the time with my children to check in with them. It helps to look at their picture for a minute and then just check into the heart, and you'll start to conjure up the images of their faces and maybe able to hear them saying things. It's beautiful. And you can do that at any time. With any people, really, that you've ever met. You have these soul connections that way. That with any person that's been of any significance, and you can call them back to you. If your intentions are pure, they'll show up. And that just happened to me recently with a childhood friend. I was like, I'd really like to tell her how important her and her family were to me in my youth. They taught me what it meant to seek truth and to live passionately. So they were probably the foundational wise ones that got me interested in philosophy when I was very young, probably almost too young. I think it kind of messed me up as a teenager, right? I was I was already in existential crisis at around the age of like 13, basically. Already in a crisis. So, but they, so it's like a double-edged sword. Truth is that way often, right? But anyway, so I just called out and asked for it to be so, if it could be so. And next thing I know, like a day or two later, I heard some other friend of mine shares her Instagram thing for her art or something, and I just happened to click. I didn't even know it was her, and then I was like, "Oh my god, this is her." So, anyways, the reason I'm saying that is because these souls are with us like all the time, and they're not gone. They're not with us, and the part of them that runs away and stuff and is terrified of us is the ego. And the part of us that is bothered by that is the ego. So we can simply just go, oh, it's the ego doing that. So I don't have to really pay that much attention. Feel the feelings and don't shame ourselves. We got to be able to look at our ego and be able to just be, yeah, for a second there, I thought I was separate from people, and I thought that this situation in the world has power over the infinite being I am. Isn't that interesting that I thought that? Noted. Once we actually note these things, also, in truth, it will dissolve. The ego dissolves as soon as it's observed. That's why people get so irritated with you. By the way, the ego gets irritated with you. All the ego. Everything that we make here in a system is ego. Everything that we basically teach and talk to each other about is essentially ego. There's ego that's like aligned with truth of God, but there's ego that most ego isn't, right? And so when ego is aligned with truth of God, I just call it truth, unity, oneness, divine oneness, and then the other metaphysical laws that form generally the 12 or the Hermetic principles, you could say. There are a bunch of different framings of them, but the law is one, and these are all just prime distortions of what make our reality. Those laws are just the way things are. And so we're meant to notice that we are one, all of us one. We are the 144,000. The interesting thing about this is that people think it's like a number of beings or something. It's not that. That's not what it is. It represents the actual calibrated Christ consciousness activated body. Is that frequency, which numerology comes into 9. It makes 9. It's also the unification of the shadow self, or the satanic self, and the taming of the satanic self with the mark of the beast at 666, which is 18, which is also 9. We are the 9, the council of 9 that I'm always talking about. That's what makes this whole logos like run. It's like the clocks and the organs and the. It's I like to think of it actually as a choir or a chorus, a harmony of music that is sang down from the heavens to form all of this. It's angels essentially singing. They sing these vibrations into existence, and they have representation to then sort of communicate with the guardians or other beings. So we're meant to learn that there isn't an individual self here with an individual will and things. We're meant to notice that, and we can't notice that unless people like won't stick with us, right? Like we have to basically trigger ourselves into it. We have to trigger ourselves into realizing that we're tied up in illusion. In an unhealthy way. There's healthy ways to engage in the reality, very healthy ways to engage with these relationships. We don't have to lose any of these people, but until we really get this part of the lessoning, they tend to just keep walking away from us, and then maybe they'll come back. So I don't want to paint a morbid picture either. I'm not saying that we're going to be like alone in the human state all the time. One of the things that always makes me chuckle is God says, none of my children will be friendless. Now, I don't know where that came from, but that's what I hear often when I feel alone. And then I'll have experiences like birds will come to me or something, or like a hawk or whatever. So it's like one of my friends, and I often just weep at it all. because I'm realizing all of the insanity that I thought I was alone and things like that. So this is something that was happening to me for the last several months, where I'd feel really alone, and then I'd have this deep reminder from spirit just right in my face like that you're never alone, brother, type thing. And so they're very beautiful moments. And those moments, the sorrow and the sweetness of also the release of the sorrow, we can sometimes get wrapped right up in it, and actually then exacerbate it, and then form more identity around it by, oh, I'm just an outcast, and no one loves me, no one loves me, my attention, no one respects me, they just don't want to hear anything I have to say. And then you're going to essentially manifest for yourself a reality where you're constantly saying things people don't want you to say. You're choosing the right people to say the particular things that they don't want to hear. And you're creating exactly the reality that you're claiming, right? Oh, I appreciate you too. Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm glad it's resonating. This is a tougher topic because it's deep within all of us. It's the deepest, it's really fundamentally a core foundation of our separation from God that we perceived, right? That we made up. But that's really what drives this alienation. It's like we're trying to find that wholeness, but we're doing it in others. And that's not going to work. That's not going to work. So we have to stop it. And the way to stop it is basically to, every time we do it, we're like slapping ourselves, essentially, with karma, right? We're trying to grab the apple again. We're trying to grab the apple again. And the soul's going, no, we're not doing that. Look how much this hurts. And that's sort of what it's like. Sort of. Now it's not, I'm humanizing it to make it understandable for us, but it's not like a punishment. And it's just like, we can't go that way anymore. It's not working. So we have to come the other way, Brian says, love this stuff. I'm continuing on my journey of love and truth. Thank you for sharing your interpretations. It's helped me to evaluate my own experiences. You're welcome. And good morning, Sam. Good morning. You're totally welcome. I'm glad. I think that's the purpose totally of just trying to confirm for people and remind people of this, because especially right now, the energies are intense. So there's a lot of emotional intensity in the world right now. Lots of just intensity, lots of bickering and things going on. There's lots of things, right? And there always is. But there's also lots of energy hitting us as well from the sun right now. Big solar flares and stuff going on, I would imagine. So these different things all affect our sort of like what we're doing. And because so many of us almost wake up every day and we're like, I'm waking up, I'm up, I'm rising, I'm risen, I'm good, I'm woo. We're affirming that, and then we run into stuff that like challenges that belief, because the ego comes at us somehow, because it's everywhere, it's all over the place, right? So it's like it's all over the place, and it's in us recognizing itself and triggering like these things. And if we can step away from it a little bit and be like, this is kind of really interesting, isn't this an interesting little play here? I found that's actually the healthiest way to like really love the souls that are involved and see the pristine innocence, the pristine, whatever they're doing. If they're acting like an animal, then it's like, wolves fight each other sometimes. They do things, lions eat gazelle and stuff, right? Like, if they're doing animal things, then maybe we stay away from them, but they're still a beautiful child of God, right? That's the stance that I try to take with everything. I try to recommend that stance because that's what shows us the peace in ourselves. The more we're able to do that, the more horrendous thing we're looking at and still able to do that, the more, the less fragmented we are, actually. And you know, we need to balance the compassion and also like balance the pain and suffering that might be being caused by some of these people and things, what people are doing and saying and all of this. This is most challenging for me actually in the spiritual community, because there's so many people teaching things that are just absolute utter nonsense, and they're often the most popular. And that's a shame. But I, my mentor, my master always told me, forget you the counting. Forget you the counting. Only one, right? One. And that's stuck with me. So it can be a little like disheartening to see some of the people that clearly have a clear conduit in self, but then they're doing some distorted things that are not, but I also know that they're just doing what they need to do. Everything has a purpose. You know, your healer says, I feel chaos in the world right now, and I had visions that'll continue for the next 7 to 10 years. How do you keep yourself peaceful, inner peace, and grounded during the chaos? The best way is to develop a presence of non-attached love of this world, of everything in this world, of also the mystery and the majesty of it all. Noticing that just like this world is a or we're watching a movie or something, it's very much the same. However, that sounds like we're denying reality. And to an extent we are, because we're noticing that this world isn't real. Like it is an illusion in that way. But it is what we have. So we want to be in the illusion and playing in the illusion peacefully. And that's hard when we're feeling all the feelings. So what it indicates is there's something in us that's feeling like these feelings aren't okay, probably. Like some part of us, that's why we're like, that's why the peace gets disturbed, because something's wrong. But if we come back to the principle of just divine perfection and understand divine timing and these things, then 7 to 10 years, for example, is talking about the future, which doesn't exist, right? If we're speaking at the level of truth of this reality, there is no future, and chaos in and of itself is what forms everything here. Chaos gets ordered into by the creator beings such as us. Chaos gets formed into that. The chaos is critical. So one has to learn to love that chaos, to understand its purpose by recognizing that sometimes a forest has to burn to ash so that that ground can become more appropriate for the new forest to grow from it. That this is nature. This is consciousness and evolution. This is what it does. The systems are going to burn and implode on themselves. Absolutely. They will. They have to. There's anything that's created in fear will always entropy. Money will burn away. Everything will just burn away, because I would imagine it would take years. Like it's not going to, I don't think it's going to just happen overnight. And it's very unsettling to the world. This brings up in us who are intuitive and sensitive, it brings up a lot of emotion. Lots of it. And I'm like all water. So I just wanted to say, like, I'm the most emotional thing I've ever met. I'm not outwardly emotional, inwardly though. And I look like I wouldn't be, or I act and seem like I wouldn't be. It's an interesting little arrangement. Oh. But I basically see the world like a little girl, more or less. Or the way like a stereotypical little girl might see the world. So I'm not trying to disparage little girls or put them in a box. All little girls are unique. So I'm a little girl with a beard. So it's sort of like the piece is noticing the illusion is bothering me, So I need to address I need to address the confusion. Like, why is it bothering me? Probably because I'm really invested in what I'm feeling somehow. Like, it's reminding me of something in my past or in my story, my soul's past, karmically somewhere in past lives, something. It's reminding me of something. That's why it doesn't feel good, because it's hitting a nerve of some kind. And when we get to a place where those nerves aren't really there anymore, then we'll feel mostly just a bliss, even in that chaos. In fact, I'm just primarily, for me, I'll just say that I'm primarily just excited about what's occurring here. Because there's no other moment, there's nothing to not be excited about. There's nothing to worry about when so we're trying to establish faith, essentially. It's the foundation for all peace, really. We recognize that God has our back, and we have faith in that. So whatever is happening is okay. And I might hate it, and that's okay too. Like, it's all okay. We just don't want to really feed all of the hatred or the sadness. We don't want to really feed that with our emotion and just keep feeding it and feeding that. We can let the emotion flow right through us. And then we want to look at why that all happened. What happened with that? Because emotionality actually in itself is confused. It's emotionality is when we distort love into some external thing instead of within ourselves, loving the creator in them. Like, we're essentially a little bit confused with it, and we're creating these energies that the ego feeds off of. Basically, that's what the ego feeds off of. That's why we're such emotional beings. One of the reasons is because we're so stuck in the ego with everything that we are essentially we're having opinions about feelings, right? We're having opinions about our feelings or our love feelings. This love is not okay. This love is okay. That love is okay. It's all love. Everything is love. It's all the same energy, and we're judging some of it somewhere. So it's really, and this can be challenging for us to confront these things. Oh, hi, Tassel. Hello. Brian says, putting these ideas into action in my life has been difficult, the whole chaos factor. Yeah, chaos. Yeah, all water. Yeah, chaos is, it really helped me to learn, like, everything dies. Everything dies. Nothing's alive unless it dies. And we want to wake up, and we want the society to wake up, right? We do, right? We want everyone to kind of stop hurting each other, generally. But what comes with that is chaos, because everyone loses their mind. That's what waking up is. It's losing your mind. So everyone loses their mind. It's just what happens, right? This is what we asked for. This is precisely what we've asked for. So if we're upset about it, we shouldn't have asked for it. I don't know. I don't know. But the part of us that's asking in this way wasn't totally aware of what any of it meant necessarily, right? Because we didn't yet have the experience of the awakening to then feel, oh, this is weird. What the hell's going on? And then the chaos. Look at all this insanity. Whoa. There is so much. And then our heart pulls us to try and do stuff about it. And some of that's great, and some of it's we're over investing ourselves into the problem. So this might sound like I'm saying don't help people, and that's not what I mean. It's more like we have a tendency as humans to presume others need our help, and then we go and just try and push our help on them, which is a little insulting, isn't it? Like I saw a guy saying something about talking to neurodivergent people, what I don't even know what that could mean. I know what he's trying to say, but like he was talking about like trying to help these people like change their way of their thinking. And I was just like, what are you, who are you to tell them their way of thinking is different? What are you talking about? So we get these kind of weird, and it's coming from a good place. The intention is just to help, sounds like, but it's weird, right? So that's all I recommend, is that we're like just being honest. Like, why am I feeling I should help here? And like, is there truly something I can do? Or do I just want to be one of the people that's spreading gossip and fear around? Like the ego wants everyone to be afraid. That's what it wants. So like, do we want to help that by just being like, look at all the fear? Ah! Most of us will start to just feel a bit icky with that. And, that stuff just doesn't really resonate anymore. It's not that there isn't terrible things happen. There's terrible things all over the place. Yeah, terrible. Absolutely. But we probably want peace. And peace is by noticing that the terrible things, we actually have to take responsibility, first of all, as well, that like we also are a part of the consciousness here as the earth itself and the sun investing it that did this. Like we all did this together, and we'll all fix it together, and we'll all ascend together. That's why the 144,000 is all. It represents mankind itself, son of man, or son of man ascending into son of God, which they always have been, son of God, right? The gender isn't important, really, but it is metaphysically relevant. But the best, wanting to be the best loving being I can be, yeah, it's tricky because life doesn't want our love the way we want to give it a lot. Like the ego basically doesn't like certain types of love offered, and you can't tell necessarily. So you end up trying to keep track of who likes what kind of love. And that's draining. It's exhausting to try and do that. So my recommendation for that is like, check in with God with all of it. Bring everything back to God. Because that's all this really is. It's a building a relationship with God, which is love and peace within and faith. All of that foundational stuff that just seems almost too simple. Like that's really what it is. So if we do that and then we try to just do whatever feels right from that place, like what does God want me to do with this? Like if we start to learn like what God might want here. And sometimes it goes against our instinctual animal part of us that wants to just jump in. So we have to learn which voice are we going to listen to, and really do some balancing with that. It's very normal. So I'm still doing that. That's a big part of, we're meant to go up into the spiritual places and see the oneness and all the things, and then be it here. Like you're saying, being it. It's not, these aren't just ideas or like theories. This all is very real, it's very tangibly real. It's more real than the world itself. The entire creation is a singularity. So it's the only thing we call God or the creator. Brian says, what's your best advice you could say helped? The critical thing for me was forgiving God. I was like popping in and out of like very high vibrational states because I didn't realize that I had a beef with God. And so for me, that was the biggest shift. The other thing is patience. So those two things. Patience, the way to really establish patience is to realize that, like truly realize that time isn't real. Not just, so you participate in time, but you just know it isn't real. So it doesn't have like power over you the way it has over other people, which makes your life weird. It's just a byproduct. And, you know, some people can handle it and other people can't. And you do what you can to try to be respectful of people and all that, you know. But it was that, and then also framing the reality like a school. Just knowing this is a school and there's recess and playtime and stuff, but a lot of it is it's meant to be educational, and I can frame it as a fun education. It doesn't have to be a crappy thing that I know it doesn't have to feel crappy. I know, because there have been taught since I was young, and I remember being completely joyful and having no idea any concept of any of this terror. So obviously it's possible. So I just need to find my way to that. And so I've gotten to a place where I'm pretty good at it now, like pretty good at, even if I'm upset, I'm still generally like quite at peace with it. And I may let the Sean express himself. I may let the ego say its stuff and do its thing and speak out rebuke. I may let that happen, because there is a time to stand up and say that no. So, but when I do that, that terrifies people usually, because I'm very passionate. So my passion comes across as like a fury or something, perhaps. And so I have to try to be careful about that, because I call it the dragon in me, basically just rages up and just kind of, I let it come out sometimes. And it sounds actually more horrific than it is. Yeah, because when I'm doing that, I am just speaking the true experience of the personality at the moment. That's all I'm doing. This is the truth of right now for Sean. And then people don't like that, which I understand. So the question just becomes, are we doing that to hurt anyone, or what? Why are we even doing that? Like, if we're truly honest with ourselves, did we actually need to let that happen? Did we have to tell them that? No, we didn't have to tell them. We just wanted to, for some reason. So why, right? It's usually because we want to feel heard. We want them to see what they're doing to us in some way, or, you know, so it's part of our confused thing that they're doing something to us. Life's happening, right? Life is one happening, and they are not doing to you. Life is living you, in other words. This is a challenging realization, especially for people that have had deep traumas or real challenging abuse situations as children. You're like, it doesn't make sense. And a lot of those things don't really make any sense until you learn how to heal and forgive God, basically, for those things. Like, because until we get to the forgiveness, and I wouldn't want to rush anyone in the forgiveness. You can't rush it. It's not like that, really. I think you do what you can do with it at your pace. So I don't want people to feel pressured. But we just need to notice the separateness part of it is an illusion, and there is a purpose to all of it, and I don't understand it. It's a mystery to me, but I trust that God is steering me true. And that's where the peace comes in, because God wants us to not, forgive those who trespass against us, right? That's forgive those, because what we're doing is actually forgiving ourselves. We're forgiving ourselves for feeling separate and trespassed against, which is a confused notion. And we're trying to forgive ourselves for that. But to do that, we also need to forgive God that it happened. If we see God as creator of all, then we have to point the forgiveness that way, because that's the root of it all, right? And it's a really tricky little deceptive piece of the mind that tries to avoid that. No, I couldn't be angry at God because of how much I love God. That's just bananas. No, we're almost all of us are quite upset with God. So, and we tend to want to pretend we're not, because we don't want to be upset with God. No one wants to be upset with God, really. But that's what tends to happen when we see enough insanity. We're just like, this is just, why? But in truth, God has nothing to do with that stuff. That's all us. We take a pure frequency and we turn it into what we have. And until, as a collective, we take responsibility for that, and stop like making fun of men, calling men aggressive pea-brains, or calling women whatever names, people doing this type of thing. It's weird that society seems to be somewhat okay with doing that, but they're not okay with racists too much. But isn't that the same thing? Like, it's all this weird separation stuff. And I think a lot of this is just really rising up, and that's going to show everyone just how kind of crazy it all is, right? Like, that's what'll happen, I think. Like, people will just, there'll be a group of people that want to yell at each other, and they can. Like, it's the vocal, more extreme people that are seeming to be like everyone, but most people don't care. I don't think. They're just like, yeah, those people are strange. I love these Monster energy drinks. This one is a fruit punch one. It is delicious. It is probably very terrible for you. Lots of sugar, lots of caffeine, lots of other wonderful things in here. But there's an eagle on it, so let there be love and light in this for me. Does anyone have anything else that they wanted to talk about? Anything rising around any of this topic, or anything really? Maybe I'll just pull a card. Hive mind. So exactly what I was just saying, right? Hive mind. I'll show you the card. It's this is essentially what our consciousness is, and it has all these different like sublayerings and subsets within it and frequencies within it, but it's really all just one mass of hive mind. And we create wacky stuff in our hive mind, and we are offered many weird thoughts from other external hive minds. This is how the consciousness intersperses itself around the galaxy or the universe, you could say. And the different logoi and logoses speak with each other this way. So there isn't separation. We're just one big blob of consciousness, basically. Even that is an illusion. Even all that is an illusion. Whoa, wacky. So when we start to really get that, like feel that, then we take responsibility that me of myself, I'm not really anything. It's all of us doing what we're all doing. So all I can try to do here is like try to show a way that seems saner. And if people don't come, Jesus said it best. People are, you're with me if you're with me, and if you're not, then you're against me. That's okay too. They think they're against you. They think that they are against you. You're just like, you're against yourself. I'm the way. I'm the truth. I'm the life. Love. Come and drink of me. Or don't. But we get to that place where we can feel that. And I'm not trying to speak as Jesus, of course. I'm just trying to, that's what he's saying. Come with me and drink of me. And if you don't, then you're against me, which means you're against you, right? So, that's where the peace starts to come in, and then people will eventually start to flock in to come with you. And sometimes, though, still people will come with you, and then they'll shout at you things as well. And that's kind of weird too. They're like, yeah, I totally am on board with everything you're doing and saying. And then you'll say something that upsets them, and they'll go, but I don't like that. And it's neither here nor there. So it's, we appreciate everyone's feelings and their hearts, right? But the really healthy way, I think, is to not worry too much about opinions. Opinions is all just the ego. If people have opinions that are really gross to you, though, like if they're kind of like, oh, that's a icky opinion to hold that you're telling me about. Like maybe they're a super racist person. You're like, ooh, I don't know if I want to hang around. That's all great, right? Like you don't vibe with that opinion. You don't really want to be around it. It's weird. You don't really feel like they're going to want to talk about it and you can bring unity to them. Unless you do. I'm the type that would be like, hey, brother, you want to talk about pride? That would be me. And that's annoying. People hate that. So you have to learn to tiptoe a little bit if you want to. It's fun. I do it all the time. It's great. I love it. I love it all. There was this guy that came into the place that I was being held not too long ago. And he was huge and took his shirt off. And so I was like, yeah. And I just took my shirt off and I was like, hey, brother. And I just walked up to him. But he was sort of trying to posture, like for the place, I think. Like just trying to size up the people and what's going on. And I was like, no, we're all friends. But we do these things to try to... I had no idea what I was doing. I was just doing whatever happened at that point. So it wasn't... it was just an interesting little, I think, aid for him to feel comfort, like, because he was, I think, scared. And I wanted him to know there's no people here against him, And I think it helped him a lot. I don't know. But he seemed to take a liking to me. And we played some of the same video games before. Brian says, you're totally verbalizing my own thoughts and experiences. Oh, Tassel said, yes, grounding in our higher consciousness into our human life, into the sometimes messy, painful. Yeah. Sometimes it is messy and painful. And sometimes we let our humans speak and do things we then later are like, I don't know if I should have really done that or not. But we have to be okay with that too and forgive ourselves for whatever that is too. So that messiness, it's really important to, like, of course, see that. I think we totally agree. There's also like a certain joy in it, in the messiness. When we find the joy in the messiness or the joy in the chaos, that's really the trick, I think, to more like really stable peace is the enjoyment of chaos. Like noticing that like you don't actually control anything, so the chaos needs to sort of be appreciated for whatever it is and what it's doing. Usually it's an entropy type force that's like destroying things that don't serve us anymore, which is unsettling. It's sad sometimes, right? And all that. Oh, that's delicious. Oh, I haven't had one of these in forever, so I'm like totally binging on it. I was like, I need some sugar. I'm sad this morning. I want some sugar, and I'm gonna feel good, and we're gonna stream. I let the human do the things, right? Like some of the things. I feel like I let the human, like spirit lets the human, almost is how it feels for me now. So I like to be very transparent about it all, because like some people would Be like, oh my God, ew, he's drinking that. Oh, he's not drinking spring water from a mountain. Oh, I get it. I should be drinking more water, of course. Brian says, ascending to be my higher self while balancing peace and love while living in chaos, forgiving my own shortcomings and allowing myself space to fail has been difficult, especially since my want for being my best is hard. Any advice to conquer ego? Basically, stop trying to merit your goodness at all. Stop trying to give your goodness a value. You are an infinite being. You could not be anything but perfect. You could not be anything but exactly as precisely loving as you can offer. You are not measurable the way that the ego is measuring you. So any of that measuring of self, am I good enough? Am I good enough? That's the inhibition to the peace. That's the ego trying to wrestle you back into its own little clutches of things. The best advice I have for conquering ego is literally A Course in Miracles. Read A Course in Miracles, but then also do the teacher-student workbook. People often get confused. It's meant for both. Like if you're a teacher of it or a student of it, it's like both. Do the workbook after reading the book. I like the audiobook versions. It's written in somnambulant pentameter or something. It's like Shakespeare, I think. But it's it essentially will help you reprogram away from ego. Just it helps you to always observe the ego. That's why it's so annoying, and people often hate it a little bit for that reason. Like it's hard. It's a hard one to get through because of that. So noticing the ego is like, it's not a thing really. It's like this thing you made. So why would it have some power over you, right? Like it couldn't. So when we start to notice that really truly, then the ego does its thing and we're like, ha, good one. Almost got me. Like that's sort of the approach that I like to recommend. Make it a bit of a game, try to, because otherwise it's kind of sucks, eh? Kind of sucks. So it's got to be like a little game with yourself a bit that you take seriously, but you also don't take too seriously. Like try to, they always say balance, right? But balance truly, the middle path, the middle pillar. Like we don't have to be severe, and we don't have to be, what's the other word, like lackadaisical or nonchalant about things. We're just aware and present with ourselves and feeling whatever's coming up. And it becomes just interesting. It should get, that's what we're trying to get at, like curious, interesting, mystery. There's so much infinite nowness occurring that it couldn't be anything but a miracle. So that's what we're trying to train the mind to more believe, which lets the ego that we tend to call the ego, that's like the annoying part of us that's kind of bothering us. That's what we tend to call ego, although even that other part of the mind is also ego. Like the mind itself constructs ego, which I call ego shifting into persona, or the discipline of the personality is what I call it, because people get a little tied up in ego. But we don't, if we still have things to do here, we have to wear a disguise. We can't just unzip our flesh and fly around as a spark. Do what? Like what? Right? We can do that. Not literally. Please don't try to unzip your flesh. The book's name is A Course in Miracles. A Course in Miracles. It's a channeled material. It's beautiful. It's beautiful. It's a tough one. And there are people that like call it brainwashing and stuff. It kind of is. It is. Basically, it's not brainwashing. Well, it is. It's cleaning, brain cleaning. Not brain. It has nothing to do with brain. It's the mind. It's helping spirit more invest the mind, so that the mind becomes aligned with spirit. That's what it does. So that's why I recommend it so much, because it's just at the duality threshold of like when duality ends in the consciousness stream. So we read that book. If we read that book a few times and really let it all sink in, we'll lose really a lot of the capacity to follow the ego into things as much. We just kind of let it just falls away because we see it too clearly from studying this. Max says, how to cope with the alienation of being a starseed or light being is the only option to find an online community. How to cope? Well, so I don't know if you might have missed this part of the stream earlier. I was saying, coping is, we're trying to find sustenance outside, and the soul's telling us not to do that, but we keep trying to do that, and so we'll end up finding things, but it doesn't hit the spot. We do this with everything, not just people, but everything that we think we need and want. Where what the soul's truly saying is, I'm right here. Hello. Wake up, hello. That's what's happening. That's why we're so uncomfortable. So until we go, okay, but it doesn't mean we don't go participate in the things. Like, what I'm trying to say is that when we're ready for proper closeness, it will just come naturally. So we must not quite be ready yet. There must be something going on still. And, more cogs and things in the works. But I have faith that whatever's meant for me is meant for me. Like, who knows? So there's no one, even the ones who are on the same path don't even understand your path, right? That's the trickiest, most frustrating bit of the truth, I think, is that we don't even understand our own path properly yet. Like, we are all sort of operating quite blinded. So it's part of this learning of, like, we shouldn't really be expecting people to understand our path. But we should expect people to try. If we want to have a harmonious experience with people, we have to try to understand their paths and what they're doing, and we want them to try to understand us. That should be the first thing that any being does when they interchange with each other. Oh, what's your name? What? Tell me about who you are and what you're doing, and that's what would precipitate a positive expression. We tend to skip that because we're just more interested in whatever we are doing. And we go back and forth with that, and other people do it to us as well. And, so it's like weird. It's weird. And, sometimes we're just talking, and other people think we're talking just about ourselves for some reason, but we're not, and they perceive it as arrogant, and there's all these weird things going on. So we can't get all wrapped up in that, because every person we talk to, I was just talking to someone the other day, and I said, I don't even remember what I said. I asked a question to someone on the phone, and she said, "You're scaring me. I have to go." Like, I don't even know. I have no idea. But that's what happened. So, and this person has never, ever even, I don't know. So, but that's what happened. It's okay. It's no problem. I felt a little, I'm sorry for spooking. I'm not trying to spook anyone. There's a time and a place to jump out from behind the corner and go, blah. I do it to my kids all the time. but I'm not doing that to adults that are talking to me on the phone. But that's what I'm trying to say, is that even in these harmonious friendships or something that don't seem to have these things, even that happens. So it's like, it just sort of reinforces that feeling of like, is there anyone that can even hear me? Like, can anyone even hear me? Most people can't properly hear. No. Not properly. So they can't see or hear properly yet, like most people. But the people that are realizing, oh, and everyone, including myself, I couldn't see or hear properly for my whole life, really. I was like seeing and hearing a lot, but confusing it all and getting all messed up. I was a train wreck throughout my life of trying to cope with all of this place. And that's why I know that coping just doesn't do it. It just doesn't do anything. It makes us think we're doing things. It's our ego that gets us to cope. It's why we take medicine that then also gives us side effects. We just want to cope with the symptom. So we create new symptoms and new sicknesses and addictions. And then we're like, but we're coping. But we could just not do those things. And we could just not. That is an option. It's always an option to just not get involved. But we really convince ourselves really easily, usually. And I do it too. Like, so I'm not condemning anything, of course. It's really just about noticing where the compulsion to do the thing to cope is coming from. Because at the root of it all, the animal self in us is purely an addict. It's addicted to everything. It does, basically. It's addicted even to the suffering it causes itself. It's addicted to basically everything. Which sounds weird, but it's true. And it's why we have such rampant drug addiction issues. Is people realize that I can just change my consciousness with this drug, and that puts me in more of a state that I prefer. So then, of course, they do it. Of course they do it. Of course it's addicting, and then of course, and I used to do. I abused substances since I was like 14 because of this, so I know this very well. And it's not until we realize that those things the coping doesn't work, that we don't, and then we turn away from it. Finally turn away from it. And I'm not shaming coping either. Coping, it's a tricky one to talk about because some coping is like really destructive to you. And some coping, like light coping, like basically going to find an online community of Starseeds is a great idea. But also, it's not going to quite do it, and it's probably going to actually irritate you a little bit throughout the experience, because it's not probably going to be perfect or exactly what you're wanting. But it could be. It could be. But because we're feeling alienated or separate and alone, like that's what we're going to mirror into the experience as well. So I feel that deeply, deeply, because it doesn't seem that other people can handle me. It doesn't seem like that, like consistently, at all. So I get it. And I'm okay with it. So this is just my advice as someone who feels the same way, and I am at peace with it. There is a part of me that still knows that this is going to change. This is shifting, that there's going to be more harmony, more cohesiveness in the future. And I don't know what that timeline looks like. So I just have to trust. And that's what I recommend. Trust, faith, God's seeing me through. And I can't be alone. Even if it feels like I'm alone, which it often does, right? It often does. That's why I talk a lot too about channeling and stuff, because when we start to notice we can actually hear some spirits and stuff like that, we don't really feel alone anymore, because we can just have these conversations basically all the time. For some of us, everyone has different gifts and things, but it's a potential or capacity exists within every single human to do that. So, it's hard to feel alone when you can hear the souls of all the people you love talking with you. It's very hard to feel alone. But the reality makes us feel alone, because the reality is an illusion of separation that we see in duality. So it's a very confusing state to navigate, but that's where we're meant to, that's why it gets programmed in this way. So we eventually realize that we look outside for what's inside. So we stop looking outside and then we go inside. And I know that's the most annoying thing. Go within. Go within. Shut up. But it's true, though. It's true. It's just the unfortunate truth sometimes. Thank you, Brian. I think we're gonna call it an hour and 11 minutes. Looky thee, looky see. Alrighty, I think you guys are all wonderful. Thank you so much for indulging me, and I hope this was helpful in some way. So much love. You're never alone. Just try to trust. Try to have faith. Take care, everyone.